Hey, welcome back, everyone. I want to touch on some interesting stuff today. I want to go a bit deeper on what's happening with this spy balloon that was shot down and why I believe that China was doing this. Actually, I think a lot of people missed. I did a whole show first of all in Chinese espionage. If you want to watch that, check it out. I'll go in depth into where I go in depth into the Chinese Communist Party's different spy programs, how the balloon would fit into that, and what I believe the intentions would be in terms of what they could get out of it. But I think people are maybe missing the point on some of the deeper issues taking place right now that may actually play a big factor into this. One of the biggest ones being the fact that the Biden administration, or Joe Biden, they just put the entire Chinese economy, the CCP's entire military capabilities, really, they put a big doomsday clock on it. The Chinese military is about to become absolutely irrelevant as a global threat. And I say this on two fronts. Well, one, that they're losing their allies. Russia, now you have Syria and Turkey just had big earthquakes. I mean, I feel bad for the people, but they were actually going to be the close allies of Russia, and Russia was trying to build an anti-American alliance. They're not a good situation right now. But one of the big issues right now taking place in China is that their chips, their high-tech chips, just got cut off. That means the entire Chinese high-tech economy is gone. That means the CCP's ability to build advanced war systems is gone. That means the AI programs in China are basically gone. That means that they basically just have the chips they have on reserve, the old chips on store, and once those are gone, maybe they can order a few here and there off maybe eBay or something like that, but their entire ambitions for their China 2030 agenda, that just got utterly destroyed. Now, this is under the condition that, of course, Biden or someone else doesn't come in and just restore those programs. But right now, it's not looking like that's going to happen. We're watching right now the death of the CCP's global ambition. And this basically means that they have roughly another 5 years, where the little clock's ticking now. They have about 5 years to where they become technologically irrelevant. Because, again, generations and the way things move, it's very hard to keep up once you fall behind. So I'm going to go into this today, folks. That said, I'm going to go into that, a few other stories, some wild stuff happening as well that we're going to touch on. And folks, that said, it's great having you all here. Those of you on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, Facebook, we will jump over exclusively to Epoch TV after about 25, 30-ish minutes, so be sure to join us there. All right, folks, that said, let's talk about the first story. I want to go first into the balloon and the shooting down of the balloon, and I'm going to explain a bit of what happened with it. Now, Daily Mail had this story. You may have seen the video of it. There's the balloon, and the balloon was shot down by an F-22 Raptor fighter jet. That is complete overkill. That's a fifth-generation fighter jet literally shooting a balloon. It says here that China is threatening to respond now. So the CCP is actually threatening the United States with what it says is resolute action. It says which American defense experts say could result in further provocations after the U.S. finally shot down their spy balloon. Beijing's foreign ministry last night slammed the move as a clear overreaction and a serious violation of international practice. Look, if Trump got a big, Winnie the Pooh balloon and flew it over China, I guarantee you Xi Jinping would shoot it down. If the United States flew anything over China, especially something unmanned, I guarantee they would shoot it down. This is ridiculous, just diplomatic, fighting you're watching right now. But regardless, it says here an F-22 Raptor fighter jet took down the balloon with a single AIM-9X Sidewinder missile. Totally overkill, by the way. Which I believe was more to send a message. They could have shot that thing with just the regular guns, would have been just as well. But I think they wanted to send a message here. Also, the deployment of an F-22, which is the most advanced fighter jet that, at least in terms of the fighter jets that America has, also totally unnecessary. This was a show of force. America was saying, look, you have a little balloon. We have a fifth-generation fighter jet. Yes, the CCP claims it has fifth-generation fighter jets. It does not. The J-20 is not fifth generation, even based on basic design practices. So this was the U.S. sending a message to China. But regardless, it took down that balloon. on Saturday, 2:38 p.m. off the coast of South Carolina. And it says Beijing issued a chilling statement saying it, quote, this is the CCP now. The CCP's official statement is that it reserves the right to make further responses if necessary. The Chinese side, after verification, this is a quote still, repeatedly informed the U.S. side of the civilian nature of the airship and conveyed that its entry into the U.S. due to force majeure was totally unexpected. This is the Ministry of CCP talking here. That's total nonsense, by the way. The CCP said this was a civilian balloon, that it was, basically collecting weather data and so on, and it just blew off course and was just going all through the U.S. Remember, the Pentagon came out with an official statement. The Pentagon, the U.S. Defense Department, came out and said that they had information. They would not detail how they knew it, but that's normal practice for them. But they did have information suggest that they said they were certain this was a PRC balloon, People's Republic of China, meaning it was through the Chinese government. In other words, they know the CCP is lying. This is the CCP lying through its teeth, saying, hey, that's a civilian balloon. Even from a basic standpoint, it's total nonsense. The Chinese Ministry of Science, even if this was a scientific balloon, they're still under the CCP. They're still directly under the CCP leadership. There's no such thing as a civilian project that could possibly do this that the CCP would allow to happen without some government control. Even based on their normal business practices, corporate structures, or the way that any aerospace program works in China, this is a total nonsense, ridiculous statement that nobody's going to believe, I think, other than, just your person who doesn't really follow China news, really. It's not going to fool government. It's not going to fool military. It's not going to fool intelligence agencies. It probably won't even fool most business people. So this is the CCP trying to do essentially psyops aimed at civilian populations. They're trying to make the U.S. look like the aggressor on this. I don't think it's working, frankly, because I think a lot of people were quite disturbed, not that the U.S. shot down the balloon, but that it took the U.S. so long to shoot down the balloon, which does show an ideological disconnect on the CCP side as well, by the way. Now, further note states this: the Chinese side, this is the CCP saying this again. The CCP is saying the Chinese side has clearly asked the U.S. side to properly handle the matter in a calm, professional, and restrained manner. The spokesperson of the U.S. Department of Defense also noted the balloon does not present a military or physical threat to people on the ground. Under such circumstances, the U.S. use of force is a clear overreaction and a serious violation of international practice. And the CCP also says China will resolutely safeguard the legitimate rights and interests of the company concerned and reserves the right to make further responses if necessary. What does this mean? Now, remember that every battle, war is not just bombs and troops and guns. War is not just, people on battlefields shooting at each other. War has two key elements. There's the physical side, the battle that you watch on TV or, so on. And then there's the ideological side. If you go into classical theories on military strategy, they would talk both about the physical fight and the spirit to fight, the will to fight. In ancient Rome, when there were barbarians at the gates and the Roman Republic was not reacting quick enough, and Cicero gave his famous speeches basically rallying the Romans to once again take up arms and defend their homeland, that was a battle of spirit, the will to fight. Chinese military strategy, in fact, a lot of the military classics, and even some of their fictional classics, they oftentimes talk about a battle happening on two different fronts, the physical fight and the spirit fight, your will to fight, in other words, the spirit to fight. When it came to the Vietnam War, the Viet Cong would tell you they fought two wars. There was the war of bullets and there was the war of words. They lost the war of bullets. They will acknowledge that. But they won the war of words, and by winning the war of words, they believe they won the war. They won Vietnam. It was an ideological war, in other words. What the CCP is doing right now is trying to basically win brownie points on the narrative battle. They're trying to make the United States look like the aggressor. This is them wiping their hands. Imagine there's a fender bender, and maybe the guy in front slammed on his brakes, and the guy in the back crashes into him, and the guy gets out of his car and says, "Hey, buddy, watch where you're going." This is them doing that, basically taking the blame of their own wrongdoing and put it on somebody else. It's the criminal saying, "How dare you arrest me, officer? I was just going for a jog." That kind of thing. I wasn't breaking into the house. I merely stumbled into the wrong location, officer. This is them trying to write off blame, because right now they're facing humility. The CCP is being humiliated right now. They're facing a lot of international pressure. They look like the aggressor. They look like they were launching a spy operation. They got called out on it. The U.S. military acknowledges that, yes, this was a Chinese government balloon, a Sidewinder, sorry, a F-22 Raptor fighter jet just shot the thing down. The CCP looks bad. They're trying to divert that whole thing, is what they're doing. And they're going to try to win the war of narrative, but frankly, at this point, I think it's an irrelevant attempt. There's no way they're going to turn this around, as far as I'm concerned, especially because any kind of investigation onto the company, because the CCP says they're going to basically consult with the company and try to make a big deal about it. There's not going to be a known company that did this. Any known company that would have the capability to do this would be tied to the Chinese government. So maybe they'll pull up some little shell company and say, "Hey, look at this poor Chinese farmer who made, an advanced weather balloon. How dare you try to shoot it down?" It's going to be something like that. The other thing you're probably going to watch, and there's some speculation on this, is that in the recovery operation of the downed balloon, you may watch the CCP try to intervene, because the United States right now is going to recover that downed balloon and try to gain intel from it. There's going to be a battle, very likely, a battle for the ownership of that downed balloon. And the CCP is going to say that was the private property of a Chinese citizen. How dare America steal it? This belongs to the Chinese people, and look at America, with its thieving ways, scooping our balloon out of the water. You're going to watch that narrative. That's the way they're going to do it. Now, that being said, if the U.S. is going to win this, the United States needs to push back, and that's going to be the big question. America, look, I love my country. America is very good at fighting wars. We could roll into Afghanistan and take out the Taliban, or overthrow Al Qaeda within just a short amount of time. We could roll into Iraq and really, get rid of the local government within the first couple months. But then we get involved in the narrative war, and America is terrible at that. The American state-run media, right? Like you talk about Radio Free America and things like this. When you talk about PBS, the American pseudo-state-run media, they are horrible. We're probably the only country on earth that finances media organizations that do nothing almost than criticize our own country. The American propaganda efforts are horrible. We are probably the worst country on earth when it comes to running ideological operations. We finance organizations to tell the story of America, and they turn around and criticize our entire culture and history, and they run 24-hour operations just slandering the country, their country of origin. We're terrible at ideological battles. That being said, now, the Biden administration is going to have to get involved in the ideological battle. They're going to have to point back at the CCP and say, "You guys flew this balloon over our country. We know for a fact it was a Chinese government balloon. You better back down, or we're going to show the whole world how we know, and it's going to make you look very, very bad." Remember now, there was one exception to this, I think, nature of, frankly, not being very good at fighting the ideological battle, and that was Trump. Trump was very good at it. Trump, when Kim Jong-un was threatening to nuke America, remember that? When Kim Jong-un, Rocket Man, was threatening to nuke the United States, remember what Trump said? Trump said something along the lines of, "You have a nuclear button, I have one too. Mine is bigger and mine works." Do you remember that? He would make them look like fools. He would insult them. He would call them names. Remember Rocket Man, for example? He would make them look like morons in the world stage, and he would just slander them and just rub their faces in the mess they made, and then make them look like idiots, and then bring them to the negotiating table and say, okay, you want to make a deal? I'm right here. And it worked. Because a lot of these countries, they know they cannot fight the United States directly. For them, 90% of the battle is ideological. And now we wait to see if the Biden administration does this. I should note that Canada is actually taking some steps, and it is at the very least a minor initial step. This is what the U.S. should do. And let me show you this real quick. New Life Forward 2018, he said, for the CCP, it's what you can assert, not what is true. That's true. The CCP, it is what they will assert, not necessarily what's true. In fact, they will often, more often than not, accuse other people of what they themselves are doing. There's a saying in China that it's the thief that yells, "Stop thief," meaning the person who maybe tries to claim they're trying to stop something is very oftentimes the person guilty of the very crime that they're making noise about. The CCP is just pretty much an embodiment of that, as do most socialist and communist governments. They tend to operate in a very similar way. Back to the point now, Canada right now is already doing the initial thing the United States should do. And hopefully we'll see if the Biden administration follows suit with this. But Canada right now just summoned the Chinese ambassador to explain the spy balloon. And this is him saying, China, you got some splaining to do, right? It says the federal government, this is in Canada, summoned China's ambassador to Canada, Kong Pei-Wu, to explain the high-altitude surveillance balloon currently hovering U.S. airspace. This is when it was still happening, which the Pentagon has said was most certainly launched by Beijing. I won't go into all of this, but you get the idea. The United States should make them look bad. The United States should summon their people and make them answer and not feel that we need to defend our actions. You need to define who is the aggressor and who is the victim. And without that, again, the CCP is going to gain control of the narrative. And while the White House did destroy the balloon pretty much after it was done spying, if you were to ask me what's really going on here, you're actually watching a real provocation by the CCP. This is touching on something that I think I haven't seen anybody else mention, and I think it went over a lot of people's heads. Something really big just happened, and I haven't seen anybody talking about it, at least not in a way that ties us together. I really think the CCP now has about 5 years, maybe even shorter than that, maybe 3 years, a tiny little window to do something very, very aggressive. And if they miss this tiny little window, they basically have a doomsday clock right now on their military prowess. Once that little clock runs out, the CCP is irrelevant. It's irrelevant as a global threat. It's irrelevant as a military power. It's irrelevant as a technological powerhouse. The CCP's high-tech economy is about to die. And alongside that, their military strength is about to die, as are their military alliances. Again, Russia has it's losing its head in Ukraine. The United States is, of course, financing the Ukrainian military, basically as an investment, I think, to destroy the Russian military. The CCP has only a few other key allies. Iran, which is being bombed right now by Israel, including key strategic locations. North Korea, which is, North Korea, and they don't have a lot of capabilities. To an extent, Turkey and Syria, both of which just suffered major earthquakes. And they're running short on options. They have now a very short window to do something. They are suggesting they will do something. And again, as I mentioned, this is the Epoch Times here. The CCP is saying that they're keeping all options on the table. The White House is saying they're keeping all options on the table to respond to this. It is possible we could see a deepening of provocations. We could see this as merely the first step in the development of new tensions between the United States and China. And in terms of the CCP's interest, I think right now, They're more dangerous than they're weaker than ever, but they're more dangerous than ever. Understand that. The CCP is more weak than it's been probably since like the days of Mao Zedong. It's more weak than, over the last several decades, but it's more dangerous. The White House on February 3rd said it was keeping all options on the table in relation to this drone. White House spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre said Biden was briefed on the balloon flight on Tuesday before they shut it down, and a senior defense official said it was the strong recommendation of military leadership not to shoot it down, maybe because General Milley was secretly advising China. Maybe that's just, part of it. Remember, Milley was actually secretly advising the CCP. Maybe they have some little interest there, but who knows? Who knows the military officer who told Biden don't shoot it down? Maybe it's something totally unrelated. But this is a quote from Jean-Pierre. She said, "The president will always put the safety and security of the American people first." And she told reporters, "We are tracking closely and keeping all options on the table." Now, Antony Blinken of the State Department, remember, he was supposed to meet with Xi Jinping. Antony Blinken was supposed to go to China. That meeting has been canceled. And he said that he told Wang Yi, the director of China's Central Commission for Foreign Affairs, that the incident on the eve of his trip was an irresponsible act by China. Washington right now is not really doing much, but we'll see how it develops. But Blinken said, China's decision to take this action on the eve of my planned visit is detrimental to the substantive discussions that we were prepared to have. Understand what that means. The United States was about to engage, not Xi Jinping, but Wang Yi, Blinken was about to go and meet with basically his counterpart in China. There were going to be high-level diplomatic meetings and discussions between the U.S. and the CCP. The CCP, rather than hold those diplomatic meetings, flew a little balloon over America, which, of course, would force the hand of the U.S. to shoot it down. It was not in any way, at least not on the surface, something that was posing a real serious military threat. But in terms of a country's normal reaction, it would be expected they would shoot it down. Almost any country in the world would shoot it down, and the CCP could calculate that would be the very likely reaction that the Biden administration would take. Meaning the CCP wanted an ideological picture. They wanted something they could use. They wanted there to be a conflict, and they wanted that conflict to develop in such a way that the United States would look like it was aggressive, that they would force the hands of the United States into some degree of aggression. Why would they do that? Think about this. Why would the CCP do that right before they were supposed to have top-level diplomatic meetings? It's because they don't want those diplomatic meetings. They want something else. They want, it appears, a conflict. And if you were to ask me why that is, it's because the Biden administration, this started with Trump, actually, but Biden just did something pretty big on it too. Give him some credit. They just killed the future of the CCP. They killed it. And it's going to force the CCP now to do something to try to save its life. The Chinese military, the Chinese high-tech economy, the Chinese AI systems, the entire China 2030 agenda, all of that just died within the last month or so. Let me explain. And again, I think most people didn't catch why this mattered. Most people, I haven't seen any news outlet tie two and two together on this, but let me show you. South China Morning Post said this. South China Morning Post is pseudo-state-run. They used to be relatively good and relatively independent, but they were bought up by, I believe, by Alibaba's head or something like that. They become now a glorified state-run media for the CCP. So, their statements are usually very much in favor of the Communist Party of China. But they said this. Why Chinese AI and semiconductors could fall decades behind under U.S. chip ban blitz. Decades behind. This means the CCP now is going to be just like any other third world country. The CCP has been degraded to a third world country through a very clever business maneuver. The weight of this cannot be understated. This is the death of the CCP's ambition. This is the death of CCP military power. This is the death of the CCP's entire attempt to break out from being the cheap manufacturer of the world, and in their attempt to become basically replacing the United States as the people who make the products that other countries have to manufacture. That just died. Everything they wished for just died. And let me show you how this went down. South China Morning Post says this: as the U.S. continues its push to keep Beijing from getting the latest chip-making technology, these are like the computer chips that go in smartphones and computers and pretty much any kind of high-tech equipment, including military equipment. It says the U.S. tightened sanctions could cause Chinese semiconductor and AI development, artificial intelligence development, to fall decades behind. Now, folks, think of what your phone looked like decades ago. Think of what AI looked like, artificial intelligence looked like decades ago. Think of what computers looked like decades ago. Look, I'm like almost 40 now, like 30, late 30s. Decades for me, when I was like in my 20s, my phone was not a smartphone. My phone was a little Ericsson flip phone. I think I had Nokia at that time. My computer was less powerful than my current phone in my pocket, right? Decades behind. What was AI at that time? AI was like Bonsai Buddy on your little Windows operating machine that everybody turned off because it was really not Bonsai Buddy, Clippy, right? Clippy, remember Clippy? That really annoying little helper thing on your computer that nobody used and was like meme level annoying and people still joke about it. That's what AI was at that time. Decades behind, that is where the CCP actually is technologically. The only reason they've been able to give the illusion that they're not decades behind is because we were giving them equipment that allowed them to be on par with us. They have now removed that. The CCP can no longer get that equipment. And that means the Chinese military as well is going to be decades and decades behind. It means that they are Cold War level. And it's going to be like the Indians with their bows and arrows fighting against European, guns and cannons. That's what this is going to look like in terms of a military conflict, if there ever is one. Now, South China Morning Post is citing industry insiders, insiders has double meaning here, but it says this: Washington secured a deal with the Netherlands and Japan. This is what happened, right? This is what just happened. Washington secured a deal with the Netherlands and Japan last week to restrict China's access to certain advanced chip-making equipment, dimming Beijing's hopes of circumventing previous sanctions, going back to the Trump administration, but the CCP was able to get around them. Its hopes of circumventing previous sanctions by importing non-U.S. technologies. Basically, the Trump administration put sanctions in place that made it so the CCP could not access U.S. chip technology. The CCP was able to bypass that by going to other countries. That capability just got annihilated. It says this: like U.S. trade restrictions imposed in October, the most recent export controls aim not only to prevent China from obtaining high-performance chips, but also to hold China back in developing the ability to produce them. Again, decades behind technologically. You're not going to catch up with that. This is a quote from Leslie Wu, a Taiwanese semiconductor industry consultant. She says, with the agreement between the U.S. and the Netherlands and Japan, the door to non-U.S. equipment, which the entire Chinese chip industry has relied on for survival for the past 2 years, has been officially shut. Open and closed, done. The CCP's entire high-tech ambitions have died. That's what that means. I'll just wrap this up and we'll jump over, but let me go deeper into this. It says, one of the main targets of the measures is China's artificial intelligence development, something deemed to be one of the major threats from China, by the way, including a lot of their cutting-edge military programs which rely on biometrics. That's done, folks. I mean, given they are at a certain level technologically currently, but that technological window is going to become shorter and shorter and smaller and more narrow, and they're not going to be able to catch up once they fall behind. Once the world advances, they're going to be left in the dust, and the world is moving at this speed, and they're moving at this speed. You know, the gap is going to be increasing, and the CCP is going to be left basically as like just another third world country at this rate. It says one of the main targets of the measures is China's artificial intelligence development, which requires powerful computer chips they can no longer access. For instance, NVIDIA A100 and H100 chips with built-in infrastructure for training artificial intelligence models and algorithms, including computer vision, natural language processing, and conversational AI, have been banned from export to the Chinese market since last August. It says just after the Chinese restrictions went into effect, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, suspended production of 2 Chinese-designed AI chips believed to be able to outperform and serve as potential alternatives to the A100. They were trying to develop things on the side. Those got cut off as well. And it says the sanctions have led to an imminent shortage of high-performance chips, pushing up the price of those still available, draining profit margins, and dissuading potential clients, said the founder of an AI software startup in China who did not want to be named because of the sensitivity of the issue. I'm going to go deeper into this, folks. Let's jump over exclusively to Epic TV for the rest of this, though. I want to talk a bit more about exactly what's happening right now, including how TSMC is about to build a facility right here in the United States. This is insult to injury for the CCP. Not only is the U.S. cut off the CCP from high-tech chips, but the United States is working directly now with a Taiwanese company, Taiwan, which they hate very much, working with a Taiwanese company to develop the very chips the CCP was supposed to get and is not going to get now, and we're going to build it right here in America. It's going to be American, Taiwan, made in America, built by Taiwan chips, and America hates both of them, and we're getting what they wanted to have, but just got swiped away right from their hands. I'm going to show you this. We'll go into that. First, so folks, jump over to Epic TV. But let me show you a trailer of my documentary, The Final War. If you want to get an idea of what the CCP is plotting against the United States, their war plans, what they've been saying for a long time behind our backs, be sure to watch this documentary. It's also in a series now you can watch in, pieces. Let me show you this, and we'll jump over.
The greatest threat facing the United States is the CCP.
The Epoch Times investigation team had studied the CCP for years, but what we uncovered was yielding evidence beyond our imagination.
With Chairman Mao, with the Prime Minister, our talks have been characterized by frankness.
The Clinton administration said, "Oh, don't worry about it. This will be a poison pill for China."
China's strategic goal is to make sure that the U.S. has 4 enemies, and one of them must be a terrorist group.
We are giving of our life's blood so that the Chinese Communist Party can survive and thrive.
All right, folks, come join us on Epic TV. We'll go deeper into this, and I want to show you some of what's happening right here in the United States now with this and what it really means for China. And then I want to go into some other wild stuff happening, some wild stuff, so stay tuned. Come join us on Epic TV, and I'll see you there. And folks, thank you for being here. Those of you curious, by the way, I'm actually drinking